There Will Be Blood is a 2007 film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, production designed by Jack Fisk, and shot by Robert Elswit. Loosely based on Upton Sinclair's 1926 novel Oil, it follows the story of would-be oilman Daniel Plainview as he mines, drags, scoops, lies, schemes, and kills his way to the top, abandoning those important to him and developing bitter rivalries not with competing oil producers, but with an otherwise insignificant charismatic preacher named Eli Sunday, whose father's land he seeks to drill. These two enter a decades-long battle of the hucksters that eventually leads to the demise of both men. Visually, it's dense. There's an awful lot to unpack, from its use of a diverse color palette ranging from deep oranges and violets to endless seas of pale beige and blue, to its consistent use of frame within a frame to create tension, to the running blood metaphor of being smeared in oil used as a shorthand for violence.
Splash around in here.
Without context, it's almost too much to unpack meaningfully. Fortunately, it's not the only movie based on the novel Oil, though it may be the only good one.
Hello, cousins. How y'all?
This is Tulsa, 1949, directed by Stuart Heisler, production designed by Nathan Jurin, and shot by Wynton C. Hosh. It is, as far as I can find, the only other movie based on the novel. More to the source material's point, it has an environmental message. Mind you, that environmental message is...
Oil and cattle can get along together. Why not let us show you how?
See, Tulsa was funded by the state of Oklahoma, and serves almost as an answer to Sinclair's accusations against the oil industry, focused largely on showcasing the improvements in conservation made in the aftermath of oil's publication. Similarly to There Will Be Blood, it follows the destructive power of greed, in this case, in one Cherokee Lansing, the daughter of a prominent rancher who sets out to take revenge on the oil company for the death of her father, eventually becoming the same kind of greedy tycoon she once sought to destroy. First, let's take a look at each film's main character's color scheme. Daniel Plainview dresses almost exclusively in earth tones, muted grays, browns, and muddy reds, and almost always sports his brown campaign hat. Often he wears a blue shirt. Symbolic of a blue-collar man, Daniel Plainview does his own dirty work. This doesn't end as he climbs the social ladder either. In the last scene of the film, he's a millionaire. That's a 1930s millionaire, mind you, standing in the bowling alley of his opulent mansion, and he wears a gray sweater, brown trousers, and a blue shirt. When we meet him, he's huddled by a campfire in the desert, and when we leave him, he's one of the wealthiest men in the country. And his wardrobe hardly changes. Daniel Plainview is a man built for scrabbling at the bottom, and he finds no comfort in his life at the top. Tulsa knows no such stagnation. Its protagonist, Cherokee Lansing's color palette, changes consistently throughout the film. When we meet her, her wardrobe is comprised of bright greens, whites, and beiges, perfectly jiving with the film's somewhat heavy-handed insistence that cattle ranching, her current profession, and nature are harmonious with each other. She is the same color as the land because she is the land. It should be noted that the film also makes a well-meaning but poorly aged connection between Native Americans and purity of the natural world, and that Cherokee Lansing is herself part native in the story. As she begins to take on the oil magnates by starting her own oil company, her wardrobe shifts to a trustworthy and heroic light blue, which is soon spattered in black as her first derrick finally hits oil. The evil of the oil business has now touched her. As she begins to let greed take hold over her original quest for vengeance, as she betrays the promises made to her friends, and lets her greed take precedence over environmental concerns, she comes back to green again. This time a dark, shiny sort of green, like greed and jealousy and envy, and like a verdant landscape, soaked in oil. At the end of the story, she realizes the error of her ways, but it's not enough to simply turn back from her over-drilling anymore. In a violent catharsis, the oil field is destroyed by a raging fire, dynamited by the protagonists, and we're left with her where she started, dressed in light blue, covered in oil. The imagery of the burning oil well is also present in There Will Be Blood, though its significance there is different. In Tulsa, the burning wells come at the end, as a reckoning for the protagonist's sins, a fiery, destructive force, symbolic both of the resolution of Cherokee's inner turmoil and of nature righting wrongs. Indeed, the fire is only a problem because the density of the wells has polluted the local water table and made the field susceptible to its spread. The spaces in the scene are, in reality, broad and wide open, and yet they're made to feel enclosed, entrapping. And in many ways they are ambiguous. From shot to shot, we're bounced around an environment completely engulfed in flames, frantic faces, and collapsing machinery. The whole world is nothing but orange light and soot, and it feels thoroughly disorienting. When our protagonist is finally rescued from the blaze and the workers begin dynamiting the derricks, we are finally given any sense of direction, though the only discernible direction is forward and away from the burning oil field. In There Will Be Blood, this scene also represents a turning point, a point where Daniel Plainview must make the choice that will leave him conflicted for the rest of the film, between his son and, more broadly, his humanity, or the oil and, more broadly, his greed. Daniel's son is struck in the head when the oil drill hits the white zone, a pocket of salt water and pressurized natural gas found at the top of oil deposits. Daniel has no sooner carried HW, now deaf, to safety when the spout of oil catches fire, and Daniel makes the choice to leave his son to go deal with the oil well.
Now, you wait here for me.
This scene is also visually frenetic, though in a different way. There is here no question of direction. The shots are long, they're sweeping, and they keep the burning derrick well in frame most of the time. As he devotes his attention to the well, night falls, and we're left with these striking shots of a singular well burning in the twilight purple sky. The blazing tower stands not just as one of the two available choices to Daniel, but also as a representation of Daniel's insatiable greed, burning up everything it touches, casting its eerie light onto his son and onto his adversary Eli. At the end of the drawn-out scene, we're left with Daniel, obsessively staring at the blaze. His associate, Mr. Hamilton, clad in light gray, leaves to go check on HW.
HW okay? Oh, he isn't.
While Daniel stares, face so covered in oil that he barely peers out of the darkness behind him. The tower collapses, signifying what's to come. Now, both films use the oil itself as a symbol of violence and corruption. More simply put, oil is blood. Look, for instance, at the first death in each film. Albeit somewhat more convincingly executed in There Will Be Blood, in both we see a strong connection between being splattered with the thick black liquid and being close in proximity to death. In There Will Be Blood, this comparison serves a dual purpose, as Daniel Plainview and Eli Sunday, in a way, both deal in symbolic blood. While Daniel sells the dream of oil to the townspeople, Eli sells the idea of being, quote, washed in the blood of the Lamb, end quote.
You will never be saved if you
reject the blood.
Good.
That is, having clean water poured over them in a baptismal ceremony. Again, there is a tension between oil and water, light and dark, black and white. Eli's domain, his church, the first time we see it, is a dark brown space with very little light. Daniel's, the drill site, is made of fresh-cut pine and open sky.
I'm better at digging holes in the ground and making speeches.
As the story progresses and Eli works to steal power over the townsfolk from Daniel, the drill site becomes covered in dark oil and the sky becomes smoky, while the church is renovated at Daniel's expense and is rebuilt of light wood and open sky. Eli literally steals Daniel's spotlight from him. These two films stand in an interesting contrast to one another. There Will Be Blood is the story of a fight between two disingenuous conmen vying for control over the local population, while Tulsa is the disingenuous conman trying to sell you the benefits of oil. And though There Will Be Blood addresses the point of oil far less directly than Tulsa, it comes away feeling more genuine. There are 2 movies based on the novel Oil, but there might only be one that gets it.